This is the first of a trilogy of videos I plan on doing about the life of Davy Crockett. I have previously done a video about Mr. Crockett entitled How Davy Crockett Really Died. That video explores information about his death at the Alamo and how evidence suggests that the Hollywood version differs from other versions of the death scenario. One quick note. I know from previous experience doing videos about Mr. Crockett that some folks take offense to calling him Davy instead of David. Since Davy seems to be his more recognizable given name, I will use that throughout this video in order to maintain consistency. Davy Crockett was born on August 17, 1786, on his parents John and Rebecca Crockett's homestead on the Nolichucky River at the mouth of Limestone Creek, a major tributary to the Nolichucky. That area is in Greene County in what is today eastern Tennessee. Here is a bit of trivia you can use on your friends. The majority of people, when asked what state he was born in, would answer Tennessee. That is technically not true. A group of settlers in 1785 broke off a small area of then North Carolina and attempted to start a new state. They named the new state Franklin in honor of Ben Franklin. The so-called state of Franklin existed for only 4 years, 1785 to 1789, the era of Davy's birth. The Crockett family was relatively poor, even by the standards of frontier families. That would remain their lot throughout the family's existence, due mainly to Father John's many failed attempts at business ventures. James Shackford, a noted Crockett family historian, had this to say about John Crockett, quote, "Poverty as well as danger was the birthright of the pioneer, and John Crockett inherited his full share of it." End quote. I recently visited the Davy Crockett Birthplace State Park near Greeneville, Tennessee, and can share a few short videos I shot during the visit. The first video is the Nolichucky River at Limestone Creek, where Davy spent the first 6 years of his life. He would live at 3 different spots along the Nolichucky during his first 8 years of existence. Father John was prone to up and move when times got rough for the Crockett family. It seems he was always just a step in front of his creditors, thus the frequent relocations. Here is a corral or stock pen typical of what might have been used on a pioneer homestead of the era. Finally, a couple of log structures that were typical of the times. There are no pictures or evidence of the original Crockett cabin. Given the known circumstances of the family, it is possible that the more rudimentary of the two could well have been similar to Davy's early housing. The interior of the smaller cabin is decorated as it might have been in the late 1700s. I'm not sure what the implement with the arrow pointed at it is. If you have an idea, post a comment with your idea. The family moved to what is today Jefferson County, Tennessee, in 1794 on 300 acres that Davy's father had previously bought. They didn't stay there long, as John had to sell the land to pay off debts. That seems to be a reoccurring theme of John Crockett. One historian of the Crockett's wrote of John, quote, "His hardships were deepened by misadventures that brought about debt and creditors rather than fortune." End quote. From the repossessed farm, the Crockett family moved to Panther Springs in Hamlin County, Tennessee. There he opened a tavern and inn called Crockett Tavern. A replica of the tavern was built in the 1950s on the spot where it originally stood and has been operated as a museum since that time. In those days, it was not uncommon for families to bind out their children to other people for money or debt forgiveness. At age 12, Davy and his brother were bound out to a store owner in the area. In exchange for 7 weeks' labor from the two boys, the store owner gave credit to John Crockett for goods needed at the tavern. 2 years later, Davy was again bound out to an old Dutchman to help herd cattle 400 miles to Rockbridge, Virginia. He eventually walked home from this venture and was welcomed back by his family. In the autumn of 1799, at age 13, Davy voluntarily embarked on a journey with a local merchant named Jesse Cheek to again drive cattle to Virginia. This turned out to be a 2.5-year sojourn. He traveled a while with Cheek and then bounced from job to job in Virginia and Maryland, somehow surviving and at times thriving. This long and winding trip was quite an undertaking for such a young boy, but Davy was starting to show the fortitude, resilience, and determination that would serve him well in the rest of his life. After 2.5 years of the nomadic life, home started to call him, and he returned to his native Tennessee. The family was both surprised and excited to once again have him home. Once he got home at age 16, he was again drawn into one of his father's financial dilemmas. He worked for a Quaker named John Canaday for 6 months without pay to pay off a note his father owed. He decided to stay on and work for Canaday on his farm, and despite their age difference, they became good friends and had great respect for each other. John Canaday probably had a greater positive influence on Davy than anyone else in his young formative years. This will conclude the first of a planned trio of videos about the life of Davy Crockett. Number 2 will cover the mid-period of his life to include his marriage and political career. Number 3 will focus on his later years to include his death at the Alamo. If you enjoyed this video, give a thumbs up, make a comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for watching.